separated your deep ball from everybody else?
My deep ball, it has a little secret sauce to it, man.
Never get too high, never get too low, but just keep moving.
The whole story is Carlos never beat me in any kind of sports in high school.
So one thing you talked about, like guarantees, and I think even with the Byron Jones contract, maybe the Florida lack of state tax comes into effect. So maybe it's actually probably more than Trey Wayne's. But when you talk about guarantees, how are those set up? Because I know some of them are like whether they go to attend workouts, OTAs. Some of them may be Super Bowl escalators. So how do those guarantees exactly work out?
Yeah, so the guarantee point is interesting because it's different team to team, and Cincinnati happens to be, unfortunately for me, is one of those teams that's different. So you have to kind of look at it differently and analyze it differently. So Cincinnati generally does not guarantee money outside of the signing bonus. And so that is also why sometimes it can be tough for them to land, free agents. They'll make exceptions for one player they made an exception with was Trey Hendrickson. They gave him a roster bonus in the first year. And all these things just hit the cap differently, but end of the day, it's just guaranteed money. It's, it's somewhat similar, but yeah, anyway, so since he doesn't like guaranteeing money out in the future, and so there's kind of less assurances for the player, they're less secure they're going to be on the roster in 2-3 years down the road. And so that's why sometimes the overall values can be higher. But in reality, maybe the deal actually isn't that much because Cincinnati could move on earlier on in the process without taking on kind of, financial penalties, so to speak. But yeah, the guarantees, we could have a whole podcast just breaking down all different NFL guarantees.
Part of the thing that people were doing, I forgot what the term was called this all season, but it got really popular where
the void years.
Yes. Can you kind of explain that for someone that's stupid like myself? Like I'm really trying to figure out like what's the difference, because a lot of people were saying like the Woozier deal and stuff. They were like, well, why didn't they paid like an extra $1 or $2 million that they didn't have to? They could have did void year. I don't know. Like, so for someone that's unfamiliar with that term, like, can you kind of break that down for me, please?
Yeah. So first of all, you're not dumb at all. I think NFL reporters needed education on this, like during the offseason. But yeah, so. As simple as possible, essentially, signing bonuses are beneficial to the team from a salary cap perspective because let's say you have a $10 million signing bonus over a 5-year contract. On the salary cap, it'll just be $2 million for in each year, as opposed to like a salary or a roster bonus, like I mentioned, where that full $10 million would hit in that specific season. So what teams do is they'll put money into a signing bonus to kind of save themselves upfront cap space. What teams were doing with the void years was they didn't even want the player to actually be under contract for those future years. So they would do like a 2-year deal, but add 3 fake they were not real years. They were dummy years. And all those years do is hold the signing bonus proration. So same thing, $10 million signing bonus over 5 years, but it's actually a 2-year contract. And so, yes, I'm sure fans said, hey, why aren't we doing this? We can add more players. We can add more talent. That is true. But what happens is when those guys leave the roster, there's still going to be that what we call a dead cap charge, where essentially like there's going to be teams in 2023 that have $20-30 million in cap allocations going towards guys that are not on their roster.
Wow. So is that the type of deal that Riley Reif received?
I think his deal did have, I believe his deal did have void years where they pushed some money down the line. But Cincinnati was not as, like teams like Arizona, like J.J. Watt and a bunch of other guys have a ton of them. Philadelphia, New Orleans has been doing it for years now. Like I said, you can add more talent, but it's gonna bite you in the long term. And I think Cincinnati, wants to have a consistently good roster and have, Joe Burrow have talent around him for years to come, not just, right now.